Adrenal Medulla, the central part of adrenal gland. I told you, develops from neural crest. That gives origin to sympathetic nervous system. It is made up of cells, known as chromaffin cells, that are also called pheochrome cells, or chromophil cells. Well, the adrenal medullary hormones, that are the hormones secreted by adrenal medulla, are the amines derived from catechol, and so these hormones are called catecholamines. These catecholamines include adrenaline, or epinephrine. That makes up 80% of adrenal medulla secretions, and noradrenaline, or norepinephrine. That makes up 20% of adrenal medulla secretions. These hormones help in coping with stressors and participate in the fight or flight response. But do you have any idea how these catecholamines are being produced? Well, these hormones are actually being synthesized from the amino acid tyrosine in the chromaffin cells of adrenal medulla. This takes place in various steps, catalyzed by specific enzymes. This synthesis begins with the amino acid tyrosine. That we get either through our diet or through the phenylalanine hydroxylation in the liver, in the presence of enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase. Now, this tyrosine from the blood is taken up by the chromaffin cells of adrenal medulla by the active transport. Here, it is hydroxylated into dihydroxyphenylalanine, abbreviated as DOPA or DOPA, in the presence of an enzyme, tyrosine hydroxylase. Now, this DOPA is decarboxylated into dopamine, in the presence of an enzyme, dopa decarboxylase. This dopamine from cytoplasm then enters into granules of chromaffin cells. Here, an enzyme is present, named dopamine beta hydroxylase, or DBH. What this enzyme do is that it brings about the hydroxylation of dopamine into noradrenaline, which again moves out of the granules and enters the cytoplasm. Now, how this noradrenaline is converted into adrenaline? Well, thanks to another enzyme present in the chromaffin cells, phenylethanolamine N-methyltransferase, or PNNT. That brings about the methylation of noradrenaline and converts it into adrenaline. Now, interesting is that the production of this enzyme, PNNT, is stimulated by cortisol, which is actually secreted by the adrenal cortex. So, it provides a direct link between the functioning of the medulla and cortex. That's how adrenal medullary hormones are secreted. Now, the next step is how do they work? You must have heard the term adrenergic receptors. Have you? Well, adrenaline and noradrenaline bind to these adrenergic receptors present on the target organ and perform their function. These receptors are in fact guanosine triphosphate binding protein coupled, or simply G-protein coupled receptors. These receptors are of two types: alpha adrenergic receptors, further divided into alpha-1 and alpha-2 receptors, and beta adrenergic receptors, further divided into beta-1, beta-2, and beta-3 receptors. The effects of these adrenal medullary hormones on various target organs depend upon the type of receptors present in the cells of the organs. Epinephrine acts through both alpha and beta receptors equally, while Norepinephrine acts mainly through alpha receptors and occasionally through beta receptors. Both epinephrine and norepinephrine signal the liver and skeletal muscle cells to convert glycogen into glucose, resulting in increased blood glucose levels via both alpha and beta-adrenergic receptors. Do you remember what we call this conversion? Yes, it's glycogenolysis. Not only this, but also in the liver, amino acids, glycerol, lactic acid, and fatty acids are taken up and converted into glucose. And this process is called gluconeogenesis. This glucose enters bloodstream and increase blood glucose level, causing hyperglycemia. This glucose production is important because, your skeletal muscles are using it to contract in order to produce response to the stress. These epinephrine and norepinephrine also have an effect on fat tissues. What they do there is that they stimulate the breakdown of triglycerides into fatty acids and glycerol, the process being named as lipolysis. You can watch full videos on all these processes in biochemistry section. Well, these fatty acids are used in skeletal muscles to produce energy. Now, what else you observe in a stress condition? Your heart starts pumping very rapidly. Well, it is again the epinephrine and norepinephrine that increase the force and rate of contraction of the isolated heart. These responses are mediated by beta-1 receptors. They also increase myocardial excitability, sometimes causing serious arrhythmias. Also, it causes an increase in blood pressure by increasing the cardiac output. In addition, they have an effect on the respiratory system, as they cause bronchodilation, causing an increased respiration, thus raising blood oxygen levels. At the same time, it triggers vasoconstriction of blood vessels, serving less essential organs by acting on alpha-1 receptors, such as the gastrointestinal tract, kidneys, and skin, and downregulates some components of the immune system. They also stimulate vasodilation, further increasing the oxygenation of vital organs, such as the lungs, brain, heart, and skeletal muscle. Well, these hormones increase the heart rate, pulse, and blood pressure to prepare the body for fight and flight response, and downregulates some components of the immune system. Other effects of these hormones include a dry mouth, loss of appetite, pupil dilation, and a loss of peripheral vision. So, you can imagine how important adrenal medulla is. But, that excess of everything is bad. Then, what do you expect from the excessive catecholamines? Well, a tumor of the adrenal medulla is known as pheochromocytoma. That causes an overproduction of catecholamines. This causes a very high blood pressure, and that's of course threatening. But this can be treated by alpha-adrenoceptor antagonists or surgery. Now, that is how adrenal medulla responds to the acute stress, by secreting catecholamines that produce fight and flight response. But what will happen in response to the long-term stress? Let's find out in the next part. Also, if you are interested enough, do watch the video on adrenaline and noradrenaline action on sqadia.com.
Explore our extensive library of over 1,800 video lectures to learn about a wide range of topics. Only on sqadia.com.